And then
Good evening, everyone. Whoa, this is very loud. It's a pleasure to welcome everybody here in person and online to the fifth Berlage Keynote lecture of the fall semester. This evening, it's great that we are able to have Ambra Fabi here in person with our intimate audience, keeping social distance, of course. Each semester, as you know, we invite a series of practitioners that are at the forefront of contemporary practice. And, well, I was very pleased when Piovenefabi accepted the invitation to speak and to bring a voice of a younger generation to the lecture series, which I think is very important. Unfortunately, well, due to travel restrictions, Giovanni cannot be here, so Ambra represents the both of them. Under normal circumstances, we would have loved to have been able to engage them both in a sort of dual performance where they're sometimes each other's razionale part and irrazionale part, a kind of balance, a yin-yang in terms of their architectural production. But at any rate, I would just like to say Piovenefabi is a Milanese architecture office founded by Ambra and Giovanni and based in Milan and Brussels. In 2019, they co-curated the Lisbon Architecture Triennale, where they organized the exhibition, conference, and book entitled What is Ornament? When it is, well, from that work, when we extended the invitation, we made the provocation to present not only their kind of research work into contemporary ideas of ornament, but also their own architectural production within that frame, and to maybe conceptualize how that work is going towards a new kind of ornament. So at any rate, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Thank you for being here with us. And I've had a sneak preview of the slideshow, and I'm very excited to hear the words attached to the beautiful and thoughtful imagery. So the podium is yours, Ambra. Thanks.
thanks, Salomon. Thanks for the invitation, first of all. I'm very happy to be here in person and not online, only online. And happy birthday. So now let's start with the lecture. Well, as a profile image, I decided to take this image to give a homage to Giovanni, which loves this image, and he always wants to start the lectures with this, saying that it looks so good. So voila, that's my homage to Giovanni that couldn't be here tonight because he couldn't fly from Milan. Here you see this image of Ettore Sozzas. It's called Non tutti sanno disegnare la vita come una festa. Not everybody can draw or design life as a party. It's an image which we often refer to while starting some projects. Mainly what you see here, it's 4 pillars which define a space, but no walls, no roofs. You see some flags as a necessary ornament. And then on the lower part, you see some wine and a napkin and bread, which is the life. And so we can say that despite all the scale and the context and the size and the program, that's what we try to do, is that we try to see how life can have an impact into architecture. So I start immediately with the lecture, with the exhibition, a bit to get you maybe more familiar about our concerns about architecture, but also about the context in which we operate, and also our frame of references. So what is Ornament is an exhibition that we co-curated in a bigger team for the Lisbon Architecture Triennale 2019. The chief architect was Eric Lapierre. The main topic of the Triennale was Poetics of Reasons, and through different exhibitions, we tried to, in a way, understand how rationality is grounded into architecture. We decided to go for this topic of ornament because we are interested in understanding how life, how language, how economy, how all these aspects, many different aspects, can shape, can have an impact into architecture. And we did this exhibition with the point of view of practitioners, as we are, not of academics. I have to say that the team of the Triennale was a team in which we teach. It's a chair in Paris, and it's the whole content of the Triennale came out of our, in a way, teaching activities. But we try to tackle this exhibition from the point of view of practitioners. So the exhibition, in the end, the result is very practical. You see a lot of objects, not so much theory. Of course, ornament as a topic, you cannot avoid to in a way, get confronted with the gigantic debate that has been basically the main debate about theory of architecture. Is it ornament unavoidable? Is it decoration? Which basically takes the whole theory of architecture. So in a way, this theory is gigantic. It's bigger than us. And for instance, here you see this frieze of the Parthenon as a cultural quotation on the very back facade of the Lowe's house roofer. So Lowe's, which wrote this text, Ornament and Crime, but at the same time is very ambivalent about ornament. And then this very text got appropriated by modernists, which banned ornament. And but in a way, ornament never really disappeared. It got Hello? Yeah. It got transformed in many other ways, so through color, rhythm, structure. So color became something, ornament became something else. And so let's say that we were not specialists of the topic when we started, maybe not even now, but we were curious about understanding how the contemporary practices were making ornament. So that's the starting point. And then we put all our theoretical framework in a book, which is this book, which is this small publication, which is anthology, a reader of all the possible texts which relate to the narration of the show from Vitruvius to today. And we did that, making them resonate with the content of the show. So the the readers follow in a very loose way the narration of the show, and the content in the book is used to illustrate it. But this book is not the catalog of the show, it's just a compendium, something which you can have with, because actually you will see in the exhibition there is not such a big historical part. In a way, we started with a very historical exhibition, and little by little we took it out, we put it in the book, and in a way what is left is mainly contemporary practices and few references which we thought were important. To do the scenography, we worked with the artist Richard Venlet, Brussels-based, an artist which works among architecture, scenography, and art. His work was his action gesture was to make a big curve, a big wall, which would dialogue or fight, maybe more, with the Kulturgest, which is this architecture, this building where we did the exhibition, which was a very heavy postmodern building. And so this big wall, which structured the exhibition, and fragments of the wall, here you see these pieces which are scattered around, are pieces which enter in the rooms and that create or help the narration, help to structure the narration. And so, voila, that's in a way, with this image we can say that's the exhibition, is this big wall, this big artwork of Richard Venlet, and then two main pieces, so La Tenda Rossa of Franco Raggi, and the projection of the movie of Aldo Rossi, Ornament e Delitto. These two pieces, then I will go deeper into it, but they structured, they were somehow the index or the starting point for creating the narration of the exhibition. And then we organized the 6 rooms in a way on the right side, moldings, columns, and walls. First of all, so the exhibition goes then from moldings, which are the smaller particle of ornament, until the fireworks, which is ornament at the scale of the city. So it enlarges and enlarges until the moment it loses its form. And on the right side, you see rather the elements of ornament. So what are the elements which compose ornament, moldings, columns, and walls? And the other side is rather how life through ornament has an impact into architecture. And so let's say the movie Ornament e Delitto is a bit the shift, because you had to walk down and going into this movie projection. You will see the picture later, and then to make the shift among these two parts. So the first piece is this tenda. That's the model of the tenda bianca, of the tenda rossa. So it's called the tenda bianca from Franco Raggi, and this slideshow. It's a red tent which Franco Raggi did one Sunday afternoon with few friends, few branch of Casabella people. This is Raggi. You see at a certain moment Mendini like a Christ. You will see it later. And so for us, what is important about this image, this project is it's a tent, but it's a Greek temple. So on one side, it talks about the origin of architecture. It talks about frugability. It talks about culture. It talks about permanence. It talks about temporality. So all these aspects, which were very much important to structure the show, which became very much important, words which were very much important to structure the show. And then this movie, Ornament and Delitto, which Ornament and Crime, which Rossi did as a manifesto for his Architettura Razionale that a show that he curated in Triennale of Milano of 73. And here what is interesting, that's through this movie, here you can just see some screenshot of it. The movie is a very strange collage of its existing movie or of Fellini, Visconti and Bolognini, and at the same time with voiceover of Walter Benjamin, Karl Marx and Schmidt and who am I forgetting, and Loos. And yeah, what is interesting about it is, sorry, I go back because it always stopped. Voila, is that in a strange way it shifts the protagonist from architecture to life. So at the beginning you see the Stonehenge, the Greek temple, but then all of a sudden the visitor become more important than the architecture itself. And then the final scene of the movie is this scene on the periphery of Rome from Roma of Fellini, where actually it's just an explosion of life and there is no architecture anymore. And so that in a way was in a certain way that really helped us to structure our narration. And then I will go quickly to the rooms. The first one, the moldings. We looked at fragments of architecture. So we looked at ornament when really condensed into few points. And so we try to see what it means. And so here you see the first part of the room. These are some moldings. You see already many schools are, nowadays, they are taking back the study on classic forms. This is the Kingston School of Art, the work of some students. And on the left, the same picture of Stefano Graziani that I was showing before, with this frieze of the Parthenon. And then we built, with the help of Richard, of the artist, this cabinet where we enclosed a whole series of pieces of architecture, pieces which can be artworks, which can be samples, which can be buildings. So, for instance, you can see a piece of Point Supreme, which created, starting from ceramic tiles, very basic ceramic tiles. They create a frieze, so that's the one that you see here, hanging there. Or here you see a very small model from Bruter. And here we were interested how the formal language of moldings is translated into a building. So actually how a building can become a molding. So we try to change scale also into this aspect. Then columns, which are very ambivalent elements, because on one side they're very rational structural pieces which carries the weight to the ground, but on the other side they are architectural apparatus made out of allegories, symbols, and so we try to see what they are today. Here you see the part of the room. I'm sorry if I cannot show all the pieces because it would take one day, but here you see how, for instance, on the upper part of the room, Francesca Benedetto from Yellow Office, she drew a frieze with all the historical columns, so the historical content became a kind of another architectonic element in the room. And then this work of the artist, Japanese artist Kensuke Koike, which is basically looks very heavy, but it's a paper piece, a paper folded piece, so that when once one touches it, it just moves, it shakes, it falls apart, and there is very strange, weird feeling because you think it's heavy, but it's actually light. So this idea about column, about the totem, about the object, about ambiguity, light and weight. And then this work of Trouvan Trode, it's a work on insulating column, which is in a building among inside and outside. So it's a column which is insulated. It's done by insulating bricks. And they translate this idea of capital and this idea of inside and outside just with a coat of painting. So the blue becomes the capital, the red becomes the inside. So just with very simple gestures. Then the room of the walls. Maybe we can call it more it's about wall, but it's rather about cladding, because today, with all these new regulations, acoustics, heating, and so on, the wall is getting more and more a stratification of different layers. And so we were interested when this issue of cladding became a conscious project, and not just the result of these regulations. So we reorganized this room with this idea of cladding, and we organized it in a way starting from the bricks, or maybe from the heaviest idea of cladding, when bricks can become, in a way, they're in between structural and cladding. And then we went to the cladding, became as thin as they could, until they became a textile. So for instance, we showed the work of cladding of Francesca Torzo with this brick in a shape of losange. She also made for the, you almost see it. She also made for the show a silk textile in which she drew by hand the one-to-one detail of the window. And so which was making the translation among cladding and tent. And then we also showed few projects of a tent where the cladding becomes so thin that become a textile, like in this project of office. And voila, then, so this is the first 3 rooms. Then we go to the other 3 rooms, which are more about put the focus on life and is impact into architecture. In this first room, which was very dense, we gave voice to 3 different researches. The first one is of the artist Simon Boudvin. This is a movie, but I mean, you can just see an image here. But he was doing a research in Hanoi, in a very poor neighborhood, about the way the houses were built. There was this very strange presence of geometrical shape, which we couldn't find why. And so he started first with the idea to find, to ask for reasons why they were there. In the end, he decided to just receive it and to classify it. And so the whole movie is a classification of geometrical shapes. So there is the circle, the losange, the double losange, the square, and so on. And together with that, he also made a research on the grids, on the grills, which were done at the same time, always different. So all the artisans, the metal worker, were each time find a way to do it better. And he classified also this. And so that was the first part. The second part was a work that Sam Jacob and Priya Kandanciani co-curated. It was a small exhibition in the exhibition. It was called Pattern as Politics. Starting from the Grammar of Ornament of Owen Jones, a very beautiful catalog, but at the same time very scary, because it was somehow a document for power over the British colonies. And so what they do is that they invited few artists and architects of these very British colonies, or ex-British colonies, to reinvent ornament for a new grammar of ornament for our times. So that's the result. You see on the left the pages of Owen Jones, and on the right the drawings which were in a way produced for this exhibition. And then this is a work that the Roman office 2A+P did. They have this big passion, this big obsession about the radicals of the 70s, and they made a big research on how, in this very moment, the radicals were cooperating together with the industries. So, for instance, here you see a textile of Archizoom for making dresses, and here you see the result, which we had were at a certain moment in the opening, maybe we were a bit too drunk, we were wearing, and then a whole series of patterns that Memphis, Alchimia, Archizoom, Super Studio, they did together with all these industries, which are laminates, fabric, all kind of industries. Which there was this very interesting cooperation, collaboration among industry and theoreticians or architects. So that was to say that this pattern, in a way, they look like very innocent drawings which inhabit our rooms, but in the end they have a very precise apparatus of symbols which represent the time and the society they've been living in. And then we move to the fifth room. We call it Vessels, and it's about facades. And here we were studying all the architecture, all the facades of the buildings when they can give an information. So, for instance, through frescoes, through texts, through screens. And of course, we try to, we put this, also this artwork of Sol Lewitt, which we found interesting in the way whatsoever placed, howsoever to reach wheresoever. In a way, these buildings were just containers of a certain informations. And in this room, I mean, I will not go in a specific project just to be not too long, but we showed projects of Bauku, of the Casa della Memoria, or Monadnock, the Strand project, or here on the very great project in the end, it's a project by Christian Gantenbein, and on each one on its own, they had one of these aspects: frescoes, text, or screen. And then we go to the last room, which for us maybe was the most important because it opened up the discussion about ornament, and it exploded it away. And maybe it's nice to read this last quotation. The city is being constantly transformed by its invisible decoration, by tram wires, lampposts, and change of paving pattern, by the horse manure that Ruskin hated, by cars, tourist buses, by rain and floods, by weddings, funerals, seasons and ceremonies, by street sellers, shop fronts, sky signs, graffiti posters, by people's way of walking and dressing, and by what they are carrying. So in a way, this beautiful text called Urban Decoration by Allison and Peter Smithson, this is just a fragment of it. It turned the question, and in a way the ornament becomes dust, which in a way permeates the city. It loses its form, it can appear and disappear. The notion of time comes in, which is a very important thing. And so the main piece which we, in a way, helped us to structure this room was this very exhibition that the Allison and Peter Smithson did in the Milan Triennale of '68. It was an exhibition that got occupied. It never opened. So the exhibition was ready, and then it was destroyed the day before the opening. And so here, these are just the pictures taken before everything got destroyed. And so basically what they were doing was a research about Florence and this urban decoration. So for them, urban decoration was, on one side, urban furnitures, objects, tram, the dress of people. So everything which could, in a way, give information, give color, give another scale. And they talk about the trash bin beside the basilica. And then they talk about the idea of the city becoming an ornament at the scale of the landscape with the new highway. That was something in the afterwar. It was the first time that everybody could experience the city from far away, from above, and that became something like the ornament, it's Florence itself in the landscape. Of course, at that very moment, that there was not this gigantic urbanization which we see today. And then as a last one, it's the ritual, the event. So the weddings, the festivities, these are also temporary ornaments which appear and disappear. And so here, I will not show the whole room, but we took, here you can see this drawing of Bernard Schumi. It is an interesting representation of his project of La Villette. It's a translation of the project into fireworks. So it's in a way you see the whole structure of the project become an event. And then to end with this picture of Stefano Graziani, these fireworks, which in a way it's something which last a few seconds and disappear, but at the same time it's something which can be so perfect and just for a few seconds. So then I start with few projects, and this is a project that we started in the context of a Chicago Biennale 2018, I think, and it was curated by Sharon Johnston and Mark Lee. The topic was Make New History, so how actually history can inform architecture nowadays. And we decided to work on the project of the metro line of Milan. Here you see the first drawing of the first metro line in Italy. So Milan in '64, when this metro line opened, it was the most metropolitan city in Italy. And of course, there was a gigantic effort put into this infrastructure, and you could see that many industries were interested in inventing new materials explicitly for that. So for instance, this Pirelli floor was invented for the metro line, the one on the right, and this stained concrete was also an invention for this infrastructure. And this metro line was, in a way, it was this project of Albini Helg with the help of the graphic designer, the Dutch graphic designer Bob Norda. It was, in a way, it was an interior project because there was this infrastructure which was naked and then it needed to be dressed. And so the project was a project about cladding and about putting a whole support of information, an information apparatus. And here you see the first, the Metro 1. And then here we see the Metro 2, which opened in '73, and which was in which the concrete, which was in the first one, got changed. So here was these concrete panels, but then were too heavy and were breaking too much. So they changed into these very strange metal gaufre, this kind of folded metal panels. And and so we were very much, I have to say, always very much in love with this metro line, and we always thought we should do something with it. And of course, this context of the Biennale was the perfect framework to investigate it. And so, as a first action, we made kind of investigation, a kind of illegal investigation. We couldn't take pictures inside the metro, and so as the first thing we make this survey of all the possible materials, of all the possible, in a way, how to say, the differences among each metro station. And as a second action, we transformed this metro line as an act of appropriation. We decided to appropriate each one of these materials and to transform them into pieces of furniture. So by starting from an infrastructure to transform it in something domestic. And so we started this, in a way, urban archaeology moment in which we started to study the size of the panels. We started to organize, to discover which were the firms which were doing this thing. And each time we transformed these materials into monomateric furnitures. And each time, at the same time, trying to design them, but also trying not to be too visible. Also, the object couldn't be too designed neither, otherwise the materiality and the presence of the metal would disappear quite quickly. So that's why the furniture are so simple. And so that's the materiality of this gaufret, this metal, and we did a folded screen, or this is a metro line. There is just one. It was destroyed by a terroristic attack, and they couldn't put the concrete back. Instead, they put these blue metal panels, and as an homage to this story, I mean, to remember the story, we made this cabinet using the same panel, the same size, the same color. And then this, which was the signature of Albini Helg, this handrail, which you see everywhere in the metro line, became our lamp, which in a way in which we tried to just give the only element which would appear would be this curve that you see in the back of in this handrail. And here you see the old pieces together, which they are now produced by a gallery called Maniera, and they got taken by the Art Institute of Chicago in their collection, in their permanent collection. And so this project is on one side about appropriation, about change of scale, about new materials and urban archaeology, but also about infrastructural works and the domestic environment. Then we start with the Pavilion series, a long series of pavilions. This was the first pavilion we designed in 2016. It was for a festival in the Brussels parks, organized by the public institution which managed the parks, Bruxelles Environnement. And they organized every 2 years a kind of cultural festival about parks. And there the curators had to organize their topic around the idea of the essential garden. Yeah, it was an interesting question we had to face, and the building architecture for a festival in the end is about how to create a space with the minimum set of means. Here you see the Festa di San Rocco in Venice, Baccanaletto. It's a festivity which appears every year, and here you could see just with few sticks and the fabric, they could, in a way, give this idea of space, which was very strong. And this is what came out of the work together with the curators. The festival was very complex. There was a seed room, a seed library, there was a distillery, there was a bar, there was a scene. A lot of activities were planned all over the summer. And so in the end, we tried to squeeze in only one big room, all these activities. And so we made this outdoor room, this square perimeter, covered by this fabric which can open and close. And then around it, we attached all these programs or uses of the festival. So the triangle is the seed library, the rectangle is the bar, this strange hexagonal thing is the distillery with a kind of drying tower, and so everything became one. And we worked together with the collective, the decorator from London, and they worked more on the uses. So what you see, these colors which are all inside these tables, they were all elements which would be opened during the day, would scatter around, would change according to the activities, and in the night everything would be maybe closed and simple. And here you see one of the pictures of this festival. You could see how in a way during the day these furnitures were totally scattered around, and this space is almost inexistent. Everything was happening under this roof. So during the summer, a lot of activities took place: cooking, gardening, distillery, lectures, and so on, in this space, which was actually facing the city of Brussels. It was a very important space, which was never really taken into account by the neighborhood or by the people of the city. And through this pavilion, they discovered the park, they discovered the place with this amazing view, and they started to use the parks as public space. Because we, coming from Italy, we are used to live in parks, but I could see that there was not this kind of use in Brussels, and it was beautiful to see how just a pavilion, a structure, could change in a way this life. And there here the pavilion is overlooking this essential garden, which was actually taking the materials about was all these planted things like lavanda, or I don't remember anymore, but they were the materials which were used to make the distillation. And the decorators even imagined some clothes, some napkins that people could use to imagine a kind of very strange reality. So this was a prototype in a way. It was the first pavilion that we did. We did it very quickly, and the few months later, we got asked to develop a series of pavilions, because this very institution, Brussels Environment, they understood that there was a big potential in the parks, which they were not, they were really not used, and they understood that by giving these structures, people would start to understand that these parks were in a way public spaces. And so these are is a plan of Brussels. You see the different parks in which nowadays the pavilions are coming in summer. So first of all, we had as a first action to understand how to organize or how to reinvent from this pavilion of the festival a set or a family of architecture which couldn't be always the same, but couldn't be two different neither. And so here we see the first 5. In a way, the actions were 2. On one side, this outdoor room, this perimeter, stayed, of course, but stayed in a way that could always adapt. Could be rectangular, could be long, could be squared, could be big, could be small. So this is the first action. The second one is about this roof. The roof is always there, can open. This fabric roof can open and close. is the choice of color. So we decided to few colors, starting from the context, sometimes from the context, sometimes as a kind of wanting to give an ensemble. And so these are the main actions. And then we give them names of the parks. So sometimes they were the landscape designer who designed the park. Sometimes it was the son of the king that did something in this other park. So we kind of, I mean, it was funny, but we gave, we entered a bit the story of these parks and give to these pavilions real names. And so here you see these pavilions. They are each time very strangely, because of the color and of the context, they are very different. And here you could see in a very poor neighborhood, this yellow pavilion, it's organized around, beside a urban environment. Or here, in this rather more maybe posh park, freestanding on the grass, or here this San Cantenaris, this gigantic park, lost in the monumentality of this gravel. This was the same of the former one, the one of the park design. So that was the same spot, and we put another pavilion, so this overlooking the city. And so, yeah, we had to do few actions, and we kept this idea of this bar, which was also in the first pavilion, that in the night would compress and close and become just a volume, and in the day it would open up and reveal the color inside. So during the day it would be this kind of object, this comptoir would be on wheels, would open up and would reveal the interior, a very simple interior, very basic, done of panels and screws and metal structure. But we decided very, in a way, without any, we just painted everything of the same color, everything. And yeah, it was our only, in a way, tool we could have to do something which was relatively cheap, and to do something which then would appear more coherent, even though the elements would be a bit maybe clumsy or simple. And so that's what you can see in all of them. This color is very present, and during the day it becomes really very, very present. And then they asked us to, since it had to be a dismountable pavilion, they asked us also to think about the strength of these panels. We had to put a metal frame. We decided to draw, in a way, this pavilion, the paneling. We tried to make architecture, even with just the paneling of the pavilion. We tried to work about the proportions, the sizes, and the way these panels are put together. Each time one panel is coming on top of the other. And we decided to paint the frame of the same color of the interior or the structure, and then the white was the same color of the fabric. So in a way, it was a project not about choosing colors; it was about reducing colors. So some colors we already had: the fabric, the color of the park, and that we had to keep, in a way, forever. And so you see this volume, which in a way it's very, very, it's blind when it's closed. And then here you start to see, maybe it's not so much, but these elements, this lamp, which is on the left top part, and these lamps here, or this other lamp, and we started to design a series of elements which populate the space, or that becomes a landmark, or that give to this outdoor room a feeling of interior. And and then to finish with this last slide of this project, in a way by reducing the choices, and not by making more choices, by deciding to go for the fabric, the same color of the lamp, the same color of the panels, and by having the lamp with the structure of the same color. In a way, when you are inside, you almost forget about it, and the park becomes the protagonist. In a way, you start to look at the vegetation, you start to look outside, and I think that's the best result that we could achieve. Then another pavilion, which we did last year. It was in the context of a Biennale of Architecture of landscape, Biennale de Paysage of Versailles. And Jamel Clouche, which curated the exhibition Augures, asked us to make this pavilion as a bar, as a summer bar for the students of architecture inside the School of Architecture. And so there was already this historical context, which was very, in a way, mineral, very empty, very wide. And we decided to bring in some vegetation. And so we started to think about this Tibadium of Plinius by this reproduction by Schinkel, in which, in a way, the plants become the protagonist, and in which architecture almost disappears. There is almost not a roof. In a way, the structure that you do is there to accommodate vegetation or other things than people. And then maybe this is not so much of a veranda or a structure, but what we liked in this small bench of Aldo Van Eyck is that it can be many things at the same time. So it can be just by having this perimeter and a panel of wood, it can be a protection from the fire, it can be a table, it can be a bench, it can host you in when you want to be warmer. And so we liked the idea of, with very few means, doing a lot. And then that's in a way the result. It's a pavilion. We decided to design a pavilion for the parties of the school. So you see this perimeter, which will host the vegetation, and then the bar that in the other pavilions, we had designed as closed boxes. We tried to explode it a bit. So the roof we just put the roof on top of the structure, and then there was the counter was just a table, and then everything that needed to be closed became this, in a way, a furniture. And so a place where you could have a drink during the day, or just rest and study, or meet your friend, and then at the same time a place where you could do parties during the night. And in the design was included also a dance ball and the smoke machine. And so, this is the result. This perimeter, which is in a way very loose in this context of this very monumental context of the School of Architecture of Versailles. This roof, the table, in this picture the furniture was still not there, the disco ball, and the plants for which we have to be a bit more patient because they are on their way. And this is, since then we became a bit the professionals of the pavilion. We got asked in a very short time to design a circus for the Beaux-Arts in Brussels. It was it was not a coincidence. There was this Léger exhibition which was going on, and they wanted in a very short time to have a space to host events related to Léger and to the circus idea. And of course, we like this idea that of the circus. How can you not like the circus? This idea of very surreal and very fantastic, and that in a way is separated from the outer world just from this textile skin. And then, yeah, then the circus is always in a place, in forgotten land, in places which are always a bit sad, always like unused lots. And yeah, we like this challenge, and that was the site. It was on one side, of course, there was this bazaar, which is this building of Horta, but on the other side, this gigantic building site, which is still going on. And then, of course, then you start to think about a circus. How can I do a circus in such a long plot and slopey even? And so we had to do what to do in this, how to do a circus in this long plot. And in the end, we decided to do a half circus, which is in a way how to give the idea of a circus, but which is not a circus. And so we decided to cut this circus in two. And the structure had to be self-standing because of the historical place, because you couldn't put tension cables on the ground. And so that was, in a way, the challenge, to make a structure which could stand on its own so that it become bolder than an actual circus, which it has much more structure than a circus itself. And then the dress, a dress which can be just a textile, and that separate these two universes, the universe of the city, the universe of the circus. And here you see the drawing for the fabric maker, where you see the dress, the mock-up of the dress completely open. And then this half circus had also a few elements which could resonate, could populate the space. So the entrance hall, a signage, and this star, a bit in the same trend of the pavilion, where we use the sphere. Here we use these colorful bulbs. And in the end, it was done very quickly, and that was in a way the result. Very rough, small pavilion, small circus. From the outside, it looks very, in a way, mute, with not so much detail, not so much welcoming. And then when you come inside, the colors start to take form. You see the structure, which is very present. You see this relationship among this very, in a way, bold, rough, heavy structure and the textile. You never understand. Always this geometry always overlap, and in a way it plays a bit the role of the black lines, which was not intended, but then we could see it in the Léger drawings, and then we put these lights, and then what was funny when in the night could open, that gave completely another atmosphere. All these colors were really present on the textile, on this white textile, which was in a way just the background for this color to happen, which in a way, strange way, was very similar, or was in a way a quotation of these colors, just overlapping to the people and to the structure of the circus of Léger. This is a project, an ongoing project. It's one of the biggest projects that we are working on, and it's a very challenging project. It's a competition we won now 1 year ago together with with List. It's a project in the context of a master plan that you see up there. It's a master plan which is between this, in Paris, in the north part of Paris, in Goutte d'Or. It was a very, in a way, difficult neighborhood until a few years ago, because of being an enclave inside these two railways. Now there are a lot of works of master plans, and the neighborhood is changing a lot. So the master plan is the one above there, done by Lausset, and the tower is the one with the black. So it's the first tower that we, that in a way is the last tower. All the others have been already built. So it's the last tower to be built, but at the same time, it's the first tower that you see coming from Paris. And so here you see the shapes were given by the master plan. These circles were there, 2 floors, and then the form, the direction, the geometry of these towers, little towers which have 35 or 50 meters, in our case 35, and then the direction always shifted to avoid the vis-a-vis, to give a better orientation, and then, so this is the south, east, west, and then on the southwest, there is the view on the Sacré-Cœur, which was the main item of the site. And so we tried a bit what to do with this form, which is given, which is already quite specific, and we tried to make a few tests, and how to create terraces, how to give another volumetry to this building, and in the end, that's what we tried to do. Yeah, we made 2 terraces, the one above and the one on the side, and so we did very little because couldn't lose so many square meters, and then we worked very much on the socle, on the plinth. The plinth was supposed to be full, and we worked in excavating it. We worked in emptying it, and then we tried to put exterior spaces in the plinth so that this colonnade becomes rather a dress or a fence around these places, which are much more richer than just 2 floors, a complete volume. And here you see the render we had to do for the competition. You see on the left this triangular garden, this other terrace on the right, these loggias. And the work on the ground floor was very dense. We had to put a lot of programs. Starting from the left, you see some cafe, the triangular garden, a brewery and a shop, the entrance which cross over, so which passes from one side to another to reach the inner core, the bikes and all the storage for the inhabitants. And then on the very right, this Beaux-Arts. It's a cultural equipment. It's a section of the Beaux-Arts for evening activities, like there are art rooms and performance rooms. So here you see in a way what we liked about it is this continuity, this field about inside and outside, and you don't see anymore this difference. And so you see also this relationship among inside, and you're still inside the circle, but you can still feel to be outside. And so this is and also we liked very much this, the way, for instance, here, the terrace for the neighborhood, for the inhabitants, is attached or is in proximity of the art rooms, of the art center. And then, of course, this project is it's very challenging because it's a project with a very small budget, and it was maybe the first time that we're facing how to make architecture, big architecture, but with very few means. How actually every decision that needs to be done, that we cannot have space for designing, but every decision has to be taken into account. So the frame window, the color of the frame window, the paneling, the color of the floor. There is not, you cannot choose whatever. You can just have a small range, but every decision in this kind of grayness is important. And so, for instance, the idea, the way the structure, the paneling of the building is in relation to the concrete socle, the way this design is done, the way the curtain or this red covering for the windows, are, in which color it is, everything become extremely important. And yeah, even here it's a work on disappearance because of lack of means. So in a way to try to make it less visible, it's in a way the good result. So here to try to make these joints, the building is built, it has a wooden structure and it has a zinc paneling. In a way, how to do this zinc paneling without wanting to be too evident, almost wanting to disappear. That's in a way the good result. And there you see the relationship among the tower and the socle, this art center, which is in. And then about the apartments, we first have this core, then the wet rooms and the entrance parts. And then each time the rooms, they organize themselves perpendicular to the facade, so giving all these directions. And then at the 6 corners, these loggias, and these loggias are always at the core of the apartment. They're never on the side. So these loggias are always between 2 rooms, either the living room and the bedroom and so on. And so this is a plan. It's interesting when we have to somehow deal with this change of geometry. Here you see the main room, no? And then attached to this main room, you see all these other spaces which manage the change in geometry, the fact that it's not 90 degrees. And here a few apartments in which you see the loggia always being at the center in between 2 spaces. So for instance, in this, the building in the rectangular corner, here you see how the loggia is in between the kitchen and the living room. In this smaller apartment, you see how the loggia is in between the bedroom and the living room, and in the bigger one, how in a way the living room is surrounding this loggia. And the loggia becomes, in a way, the extension of the apartments and of the rooms, and at the same time, a room on its own. And here some few views of the apartments in which you see this, how these loggias, yeah, is at the same time the extension of the room and the space on its own. And also you see, maybe you understand more here about the facade, the fact that there is this kind of horizontality to have this and this continuity among loggias and rooms, and to have this vision which goes all over, this change of geometry which is always inside the loggias. And then, as a last project, am I talking too much? Yeah? Stuck? Yeah? Okay. So the hotel, another current project we are working on, one of the 2 big projects we are working on. And so it's a project in Place Roger. Place Roger is a square, very important piazza in Brussels. Here you see this small casupola there, this small house. It's where the building will be. They had to demolish it in the afterwar because they built the metro below. And there was always this very strange contradiction that there is a metro line passing just underneath the building, even though it's a private ground. And so for ages after the metro was built, the site stayed like that. So this corner of the block stayed totally empty. even though it's one of the main squares of Brussels, which sits on the ring, on this ring, which in a way structure the whole city. So here on the left, you see these so-called, by the inhabitants, the white mushrooms of Xavier the Gator, and all these hotels which then developed in the back. And so in a way, the action was very simple during this competition, which we won together with the Milanese office on-site studio. It was to fill in the block with the new building. And it was very simple, and to make an hotel. And then we started to study the entire block, and we realized that this block was never just one building, but every side of this block was many buildings at the same time. And so we took this decision that the building wouldn't be just one building, but it would have been two buildings. So it's a building done out of buildings. And then there was also this historical building of Antoine Pompe, I mean a secondary, but for Brussels, kind of relevant architect, which built this Art Nouveau hotel, which is just beside us, of which we had to do this extension. So we had, in a way, to be nice towards it, to study the heights, to take it into account, to study the rhythm. And so here it is, the building, which is done out of two buildings, which in a way starts from the surrounding, in a way very correctly, just without wanting to impose itself. And it fills in this block. And then, yeah, that's, in a way, that's the main view. So these two buildings, that's the way they meet. So it's two buildings which work also structurally in a different way because of the ground floor I will show you later. Here is how they meet. On the ground floor is this convention center on the side, these shops on the other, and then the entrance of the sky bar on the center. So you see, in a way, it was to make, the idea was to make a new building, but in fact it was an extension of another building, and that you can see very much in the plans. There is this block done of many buildings, but at the same time, when you look at the plan, it's one thing. And so here it is, this the big rectangular space, the convention room, which is sitting up on the metro line, so with big beams and complicated structure. And then on the other side is these shops, and they completely fit inside the geometry which was missing in the block. And here on the upper floors, the rooms, which, yeah, they also, here you see just the last floor because it's a bit thicker than this. So you see the thinner floor, but you see how the corridors, in a way, when you look at this plan, you see one building, you don't see many. And yeah, that was the main, in a way, idea on how to build this facade, because at the end, it's not, yeah, it's about the plans because you have to organize these plans, but it's mainly about the urban character of this facade. And so we decided to work with this folded facade because in Brussels, I mean, I guess also here, but the idea of bow window is very much anchored in the history of architecture of Brussels. And so we decided to work on these rooms, which would have on the building A, which is the one on the right, bow windows coming sticking out, and on building B, which is the one on the right, is the bow windows sticking in, which would allow for other views, or to organize the view around it. And yeah, and then we studied at the beginning the bedrooms and how this space has an impact in the way we use this bedroom. The study of the room with the plinth, the way the bow window and the table are put together, and Then, of course, the bad news is that we are not going to do the interiors because the clients went for a very, real interior architect which is specialized into that, and so the interior will be something else. And so now we talked about interior, but maybe first of all, for us, what maybe was more important is how this building as an urban role. That's our concern now. This architecture, being so private, can host a public role. And we, since the beginning, you see it also with the Half Circus and the objects on top of it, we were always very fascinated by this building of Guido Minoletti from the late 50s in Milan. It's a building in Piazzale Loreto. Piazzale Loreto is the place where Mussolini has been killed. So it's a very, after that, it stayed like that. It's a place where nothing happened, just this building. And this building, apart having this very strange lightning in the windows, it had these top objects which were, for us, having an important public role. The role of the clock. Then there was this thermometer on top, and then this horizontal black thing was giving news about what's happening today and so on. And so we entered very much into, we studied the archives, and we, little by little, we convinced the clients that it was important to have this public role of the building, even though a very private building, because of this position in the city. And talking with our artist friend, we came to the idea that we cannot just give this clock. We cannot just think about the temporality of the sun. We cannot just think about the temporality of work, of sleep, but that we should try to give another information. And we came with this idea of showing the moon cycles. And so that's what we try to do first on the building that we loved so much of Minoletti, and then little by little we moved it towards our building, and we created this clock. It's a clock which shows two temporalities at the same time. On one side, the temporality of the work, of the sleep, of the lunch, of the dinner, of the school, and on the other side, the temporality of the moon, of the tides, of the women, of the lovers. Voilà. That's the last slide.
Now this is on. Well, thank you very much for a very beautiful lecture. I believe that there are a few questions from the audience. So, due to measures, if you could come to the microphone.
Thanks for a wonderful lecture. What struck me in the first two projects was that Ornament was very much detached from architecture. I was wondering what does that mean, and why was this approach taken?
Sorry, what?
No, it struck me that Ornament was very much detached from architecture. It was isolated from a certain context in both the Milan project with the furniture, where basically you pick pieces of ornament and then turn it into something else. And then in the exhibition where it's basically shown as objects in themselves. I was wondering, what do you think it means to isolate ornament in that way, and why was the approach taken?
You mean how the fact of having something which is without context?
Yeah, which is usually very much integrated into a building or something else, I would say.
I think it depends on what you think for context, because there is a physical context and there is a cultural context, and I think that by doing this, yeah, there is the theoretical context,
No, but I was referring literally to a building, like it's detached from a building. Or, anyway.
meaning
A physical context.
for the. Sorry, to try to understand the question.
No, it's fine.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
No, so I was like even, well, all these objects in the exhibition were basically, they turned into, I think when an ornament is detached from the wall or from whatever it is, it turns into an object on its own, and you start reading it differently, I suppose. And I was wondering if that was the reasoning behind doing that, rather than showing it in a way it was part of a larger series of decisions made by architects, designers, creators.
That's true that when we made this exhibition, we decided not to show a project in all its nuances. So starting from the place where it is, with the ground floor, with the plan, and we just took an element and we just threw it into the room. And sometimes, very often, was a very physical element, was just a piece, was just a detail, was just a model, and we didn't necessarily tell the whole story about it. And so I think that for us it was quite important, but it's rather a question about curating. So it's for us it was important that the pieces of different projects would tell a story which was something else of the project itself. So if for the project of Francesca Torzo, for instance, I don't know, just making one of them, but we didn't explain that it was a museum. There was a small text explaining it, but we didn't explain that it was done for that context. And but we just showed how, in a way, this issue of cladding was, in a way, was resolved, and that would resonate also with another project from Jan de Wilder, which was also using this big losange, and he would just cover it. In a way, we just made more formal and metric connections, and rather than explaining the project itself. And by doing that, we appropriated, in a way, of these things. And yeah, it was not the project, but it was the idea of it. That specific idea about it. Because of course, all these projects are done by many ideas, but we picked up that, and that idea we put it in relation to other things. So that's what we learned about curating by doing that.
Hi, thank you for your lecture. Like Samlon said, good stuff. Really appreciate the images. I come from a graphic design background myself, so I really enjoyed always if architects use ornament or other mediums to communicate stuff, right, to say something. And what struck me was this old archival image of the Palace Hotel with the sign, which spelled out in letters, Palace Hotel, and that you took this as an opportunity to make your own sign, but in your very own way, not literally communicating through letters, but through something quite abstract, I may say. Yeah, and something which maybe not everybody would understand, right? This clock is something quite ambiguous as well. Maybe can you reflect on this, or on your thoughts or intentions on this? I mean, there must be a reason why you didn't place back these letters as well, right?
I mean, white clock had these two temporalities, or why it was so different in...
Yeah, they're really opposing almost, right? Palace Hotel, these letters you cannot interpret in a different way than what it says, whereas this moon is something different.
Well, to me, that's maybe the most correct project we have ever done. It's like a kind of urban building. It cannot be wrong. It has all the kind of attentions to to the height of the building, to the size, scale of the building, to the colors of the building, to how to all these heights become the same height. It's really a project which is adjust upon the existing, and for that, I almost felt always like it was too weak because it couldn't express itself as a project on its own. And in a way, that's not true because we could find a certain language which maybe, if you look at it with the closed eyes, it doesn't look like a building of our era, but then when you start to look closer, you realize that it's something not of the same time. But to me, the idea of making this clock was not about showing the hotel, which in a way we had just, we had already given, in my opinion, too much attention to this hotel, and I wanted to talk about a bigger environment, which was the city. And so to me, it was not about saying it's about to go to sleep. It's about time to go to sleep and about, I don't know, time to go to work, and something that an hotel, or it's not about the hotel palace, but it's something that could talk about almost like universal issues, and by doing that, it transcends the idea of this private building on its own plot, being very correct and well designed, but still there, and it becomes a project which has an urban role. So our project, in a way, couldn't make public space because everything was private. Of course, you can enter the hotel, but still, by being in this place, in this corner of this very square, and you have a role as an architect, I think, to give a public role to the building, and yeah, that's what we try to do.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
I hope I answered.
That's a clear answer. I mean, you give a signage to the public space.
Yeah, it's about another
life.
scale, about the cities, about the square, not about that very corner.
Hi, thank you so much for a very unique perspective on architectural elements. So I couldn't help but notice sort of this deconstructivist approach in all your projects, except maybe the residential one, but even the elements on top of the last project which you shared. And I was, so the process was very interesting for me, that you sort of have this investigation, form a toolkit out of it, and then perform these various actions or transfigurations, like you had scaling, explosion, shifting functions. So it's almost like you create this set of Lego blocks for yourself and you're playing with the blocks in different configurations. So it's a very creative, and it has a lot of freedom when you're working with a toolkit and trying combinations. So I was wondering on how do you pose restrictions for yourself or sort of limit yourself in such a free system of working?
You mean the role of restrictions into what we do?
Sorry?
The question is, because there is a bit of an echo, so sometimes, but you're asking the role of restrictions.
Yeah, so since it's a very free process that you create, you just shared with us, so I was wondering, how do you restrict yourself? Like, how do you sort of decide that this is how much scaling should happen or how much transfiguration should happen? So is there a manual or a process or a methodology?
I mean, let's say that maybe by showing the lecture, you always show what you, in a way, the result or the process, and you show what, in a way, you wanted to do. But in a way, the starting point is always a restriction, and that's the restriction is, I mean, in a way, the base of what. It's actually the restriction which gives you the idea of how to find the solution. And if there would not be restriction, I would not know maybe how to make a project. I think that from the restriction, the project is shaped. And I don't know if I can make an example, but if I can say the pavilions, it was just about technical requests, and by doing this by having to solve the issue of security, the issue of dismounting, or the issue of so that we couldn't do more. That was actually the starting point, which made us deciding to make this paneling, the frame. I didn't want the frame at the beginning, but then because I wanted just as a volume, but then by having to be forced to having these frames, then I transformed it into a project. I transformed it into architecture. So the way the panels are cut is because they need to have a certain size to be moved, but also you do that this frame becomes the drawing of your architecture, and so you turn it into your advantage.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the lecture. Good. I noticed you used a lot of lighting in your architecture, either the diffused lighting through the materials of the tent, or you have these colored lights, the exposed light bulb, and then the shapes of the lights throughout your fixtures that you design. So if you could kind of further discuss the process of how you design or incorporate the lighting into your pieces of architecture.
Well, how we design, how would we go choose these formal languages and colors? That's
yes.
Once we did the scenography, which was so colorful and so formal that for 1 year we just did the black and white things, and just very rectangular and shapeless and formless objects, because we got a kind of how to say, indigestion of colors and forms. But on one side, it's something which we have it easily, that it comes maybe too easily when we design things. But at the same time, let's say the idea of the color, the use of color, or the use of a material, it's often something that you cannot avoid, because it's something that you have anyhow to choose. You have anyhow to choose the finishing of a material. You have anyhow to choose the kind of and that is something that, in a way, even if the budget is so minimum, it's a tool that you have. It's a potential that you can exploit, and so it's something that for us it's in the cladding section of the exhibition, in the wall section. There was also, among all these, there was the idea of just the paint on a wall as an idea of cladding, because actually that's what you can do when you have no means, when you cannot put too much money, too much effort, too much design effort on something. Then you can take a color, you can decide a color, you can that it's anyhow there. And the same for the forms, I would say, because yeah, of course, maybe rectangular or square, it's something which comes easier than others, but anyhow you need to give a...
But your actual light fixtures and like light bulbs, like the pieces that you design, either have like a colored light in the actual lighting, or it's this, your big ball of diffused light that you had in the corner of one of the pavilions. And it seems like lighting is very important to you, and I just wanted... it's very different in terms of color.
These balls,
Yeah.
For us, when you do such a perimeter and then you put the roof and then this pavilion, then it's done. For me, for us, I mean, while in the process of designing, we try to put another scale in it, another layer of understanding. And so, yeah, if you wouldn't have this light sticking up, or if you wouldn't have these inner lights or this object, this lamp which can move around, then you would have maybe, you would have a shelter, but it wouldn't convey this idea of interior, of space. It wouldn't be welcoming. So these are all aspects, elements which we try to put into, already you need light, so you need to put it, but how this can become a conscious decision and not just a technical one. No? You could have put a spot just on the side to enlighten all things, but we decided to put these lights on a lower part so that when you sit, you have it beside you, like in a cafe, in a Viennese cafe, for instance. So we, in a way, you had to face few decisions, and these decisions, in a way, they are essentials to the result.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the lecture. It was very interesting. Maybe taking back to the idea of ornamentation, what really struck me was the exhibition you showed where there was documentation of the residences with the grills and the geometrical patterns outside. And then, looking at the other ways now ornamentation is done. So I wondered, and what would be your comment on this homogeneous facades that are appearing, or the absence of ornamentation which is done by hand or through more artistic, interest, and how it's changing, or where can they meet again in a way?
I think it's difficult to generalize like that, to say that now the facades are rather mute, or that in other kind of countries or places we have this kind of condensed or point of ornamentation. We, in a way, we started to investigate the architecture through this exhibition when the ornamentation is condensed, when it's the result of few decisions, when you can just, in a way, it's not, we didn't study these big buildings or big buildings with a lot of money where you could just take so many decisions and you could decorate it as you would want, but we were, in a way, interested in the architectures where, due to lack of means or due to strong regulations, people would have to come with a solution that would make it, turn it into architecture. So I think, for instance, how we were explaining for the cladding, we could see many facades which are just blunt and without any detail, because they are just the result of a regulation without real thinking. But I think that a facade can be turned into architecture, meaning when there is a reflection about ornamentation, and when you turn these regulations into your advantage. And so for instance, the project of Francesca Torzo, I found it very relevant, for instance, because of this geometrical research, which maybe doesn't look, it's also everywhere, no? It's also not specific in one point, but by choosing this form and by then having to solve the joints of with the windows, with the floor, and then it makes it something which is very to the point. I don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, on that note, thank you again And, well, thank you to you and Giovanni. So, even he's here in spirit. So, another round of applause. Thanks.
Thanks.